Okay, kids, it's time for another episode of the Fueled by Weird podcast, the only podcast that is not a member of the Merry Marching Marvel Society just yet. I'm Chris Daly, and today I have the pleasure of chatting with Mr. Joe Quesada. Joe, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Chris. How are you, man?
I'm doing so good. Just ready to talk comics with another Idaho guy. I'm pretty excited.
Let's do it, man. Idaho and comics, they go together. It's like
Let's
peanut
do
butter
it.
and chocolate. Uh,
Absolutely. All right. So usually I like to start these things off with an icebreaker question just to kind of, break the ice. So
okay.
today's question is, your new name is your dad's middle name, followed by your favorite childhood food. What is your new name?
Ooh, let's see. So it'd be Luis. You said my dad's middle name, right?
Yeah, dad's middle
Yeah,
name and then your
what's my
favorite
middle
childhood
name
food.
too? So it'd be ooh. This is a tough one. Uh I guess it would be Luis French Fry.
Perfect.
Louis
Oh,
French Fry, you know?
nice to meet you, Mr. French Fry. I would be Patrick Pizza.
Oh, pepperoni pizza was a good one. That's a good one.
Very good. All right. So, the concept of the show, Fueled by Weird, it's, all the hobbies, interests, and stuff you're into kind of come together to make you who you are. So, what are
Yeah.
some of your hobbies and interests? What are some things you like to do?
Uh, things I like to do. Well, things that I like to watch in particular, I love watching sports.
Hmm.
I watch way too many documentaries. I know way
Okay.
too much about serial killers than I probably should. Um, I do a lot of bike riding. Used to play sports actively. I played men's senior baseball for a long time until, I just couldn't anymore. Um, and I love to make stuff up. That's literally, I mean, it sounds weird, but my favorite hobby is what I do for a living. It's corny, and people can say what they say, but it's true. I get paid to make stuff up, and then draw it, and write it, and um, I'm often I often have to remind myself on tough days. When I say tough days, like just days like, oh man, I really just don't want to draw today.
Yeah.
That I have to remember that I don't have to draw. I get to draw. I get to write. And if I frame it like that for myself, I usually end up in a better headspace to do my work.
That's good advice really for anybody. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always, a good piece of advice I've always heard is if the thing you want in the world doesn't exist, you should make it. And so you're doing just that. And I think that's very commendable.
Yeah. Listen, I just, I've been fortunate in my life,
Sure.
to be able to do this. Um, I often equate it. It's funny because it was one thing to get into the comics industry. It was another thing to then end up what I was doing in the comics industry, from going from freelance artist to having my own company to Marvel Knights to editor in chief, Marvel chief creative, all that sort of stuff, and then looking back and going, how the hell did I get here? And I equated to a dog in an elevator. When I was in New York City, speaking of dogs, yeah, that's fun. When I was in New York City, um, I lived in the seventh floor of a building, and um, would take my dogs out for a walk, right? So they're on the seventh floor of the building. They can't, all they see is skyline. And when they get in I always wondered, when they get in the elevator and the doors open and they're on the streets of the city, what do they think? How did we get here? It's like a doggy teleporter, right? Because I can't imagine they grab the concept of they're in an elevator going down, just doors closed, doors open, street, dog teleporter.
Sure.
So it's kind of what I feel like is like a dog in an elevator. Sometimes when I look back and I go, how the hell did I get here? But I'm glad I'm here and I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yes, we're all very glad. So, so glad. Now,
Thank you.
speaking of creating things, you're very well known to be a writer and an artist. What was it originally when you were growing up that inspired you to do both?
Well, I didn't. I read comics as a kid. I read them from the ages of 8 to 12. at which point I discovered two things that became much more important to me at that time, which was baseball and girls, and not necessarily in that order.
Okay.
So comics, just became the childhood. I forgot all about it
Sure.
and didn't rediscover comics until I was 25. So I had a whole chunk of my life, 13 years of my life, where I really wasn't interested in comics and didn't really see it as my career path. Um, but then once I was introduced to comics, I just started to read them religiously. I started to think, maybe this is something that I might want to do. I mean, I had the art background. I went to art school, but again, comics was not my focus.
Sure.
Um, I was a musician at the time too. So um, I found myself in this industry and had a modicum of success that I was able to build on. And again, met people and made some of the right moves and right place, right time. A lot of that stuff came together, to allow me to do what I've done in the industry. And again, none of this happens without people like yourself and the fans out there who supported, the stuff I've done or hated the stuff I've done. And I've destroyed many a childhood, Chris, destroyed many a childhood. Uh, but I think I've made some people kind of happy with some of the stuff that we produced as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can't please everybody, right?
No, you never can. You can't try to either. You just have
Right.
to, therein lies madness and failure.
Yep.
Um, you just have to, give it your best shot, apply the most of your talents and hope that the audience reacts well to it because, I don't care how talented you are and how much success you have, your next project, you don't know if it's going to be any more of a success than even the fans do, right? You don't know if the fans are going to like it any more than you do.
Mhm.
That's redundant, but you know what I'm saying.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
So, you had mentioned art school. What was it, as a kid that inspired you to kind of take the path of an artist and, pursue a career? Well, not pursue a career. You didn't pursue a career in arts till later, you said, but
Yeah.
what
Well,
inspired you to, go to school for art?
I was good at it. I had a knack for it. So, and I also had parents that encouraged it. My father wanted me to be an artist, especially when he saw that I had a talent for it. And, my teachers were making mention of it all, just about every grade I was in. So it just seemed like the natural progression of things. And then admittedly, after again, I was whatever grade I was in school, um, I would always do advanced art classes like two grades up. There were times that, that I was also sent to, the Brooklyn Museum of Art to do life drawing classes and
Yeah.
things like that. When I was very, very young, that's where I saw my first naked lady. Oh, uh, and so yeah, so I it seemed like the natural path to go to the School of Visual Arts.
Sure.
And I did my 4 years there, and after my 4 years, I'd also fallen in love, deeply in love with music, many years prior, and really felt like I was really enjoying that more than drawing at that point, or writing. Well, I was still writing, but just not, writing in prose or song.
Sure.
Uh, so I found myself gravitating in that direction, and I guess what I could say is that I've been I guess there were expectations for me to do so much with my art that by the time I got out of college, it's the last thing I wanted to do. I was so burned out. I remember in my junior year, near the end of my junior year, I asked my father um, if I could take well, these days we call it a gap year, right?
Sure.
Back then it was I just need a year off, and he
Mhm.
was like, "What?" And I said, "Look, I'm really cognizant. I'm not appreciating it. I'm not getting the most out of it because I'm just not appreciating it. I'm burned out."
Sure.
And I said, "Look, I'll go work construction with you. I'm not going to sit around and do nothing, but I just, you know, let me do something horrible so I could realize how much I'm enjoying what I have because right now I'm not enjoying it as much as I know I should."
Sure.
And my father, to his credit, said, "Okay, you could do that, but I'm not going to help with the tuition for the fourth year. You're on your own." and
Wow.
I wanted a degree. I didn't want to, didn't want to quit after 3 years. So
Yeah.
I ended up going that fourth year, but and eventually graduating, but I just didn't want to do anything with my artwork for a long time. And I don't think I picked up the, I would doodle here and there, but I didn't really draw anything like 5 years. Um, and no, that's not true. That's not true. About 4 years. So and that was just because I strictly just wasn't interested, didn't have the heart for it at that point.
Sure.
Uh, but when I got it back in spades, and that's right around the time again where comics became a thing for me. I started out as a hardcore fan, uh, like just reading everything I could read that looked of interest, and then studied the creators that I thought were the best in the business, and kept I don't have a long box full of comics, not even stuff that I've done during my tenure at Marvel or Marvel Knights or anything. I just don't have it. Um, I you know I the only comics I've really kept are the first three comics I ever got, which my father got from me, which were three Spider-Man issues. Um, and so they're all torn and tattered. Those are the only ones I've kept. Everything else, I just move on to the next one. So, but back then when I was reading, I had a pile, it's a very small pile of the comics that I thought these are truly excellent. This is like the epitome of what's happening in this time. And there was there was another pile, which is okay. This is the stuff that's I understand it. It's the publishing business. This is the workaday stuff. The stuff just got to get out the door. It's solid, but
Yeah.
nothing that you go, oh my God, they reinvented the wheel. And then there was another pile, which is like, oh, this is stuff I just don't like, so I'm not going to buy that anymore. But I used to spend a ton of money at the comic shop. But I defined for myself what I liked the most in art and in writing. And then when I started to think about it as a career, I really started to hone in and study what it was that these creators were doing, and really started to learn the craft. So, because there was also a whole chunk of history. Well, there was a whole chunk of history before I ever picked up a comic, but there was a whole chunk of history from the time that I dropped comics to when I was now collecting, and I had to get caught up on that. Like I missed the entire Neil Adams era,
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so I had to catch up on all that stuff. Neil's a
Yeah.
perfect example of that because his influence was lost on me because
Sure.
I didn't pick it up at the time. And then as I started really going through his work, I'm like, wow, and you put it up on a wall next to, all the other artwork that was going on. Like this guy was, just out of a whole another dimension. Same thing with like Barry Smith, right? These are people who I missed the early parts of their career,
Yeah.
but I caught up, and again, just worked hard to eventually get into the industry.
Very cool. And yeah, it's good to know that, burnout is a real thing that, affects really everybody. And, no matter how much you really love something, if you do it enough,
Mhm.
it's when and don't do anything else, it's going to burn you out. So, um, yeah, like for example, as a kid, I worked in a movie theater, and so I was around movies all the time,
Yeah,
and literally got to a point where the last thing I wanted to do was watch a movie after working 12 hours cleaning up after people. So I didn't really
I worked.
appreciate it till I removed myself from the environment.
Yeah, I worked in a movie theater too. It was my first job, and I remember, it was back when they popped their own popcorn.
Yeah.
So the smell of that oil was
Yep.
always permeate, right? Because ooh, the smell of popcorn.
Yep.
And eventually, it just nauseated me because I would come home and I still have the smell, and I would literally take a
Yep.
tissue and clean the inside of my nose, and there was all this grease residue from just
Yeah.
sitting. But yeah, I was I was an usher in a movie theater back
Yep.
when they had
Yep.
ushers,
Yep.
and I remember swooping up popcorn and some guy online going, "Hey, you're doing a good job there, buddy," and then just throwing more popcorn on the floor. I was like,
Wow.
I hate this job. I hate this job. So it didn't burn me out on movies, but it did burn me out on popcorn for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, you're familiar. There's nothing more off-putting than the smell of popcorn mixed with soda. And yeah, I mean,
Sure.
I could write a book with all of the stuff I found when I was an usher. It was definitely some exciting times.
Yeah, I was an usher during it was around the time when the Led Zeppelin movie, The Song Remains the Same, came out.
Oh wow.
I remember coming to work one day and them telling me, listen, Theater 3 is closed. Why is it closed? They tried to burn it down. So
Oh, wow.
whatever crowd was there, they literally tore seats off the moorings, off and tried to burn the screen down,
Oh
and
my
almost
God.
succeeded. So
Wow.
yeah, it was an interesting time to be an usher in a movie theater.
Yeah. It was the early 2000s for me, so right around, Tobey Maguire's first Spider-Man movie and a lot of the big movies like that. And yeah, it was nothing quite as exciting as your story, but yeah, there was definitely some exciting times for sure. And I think really only people who've ever worked in a theater can understand
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. All right, sir. So next thing I want to talk about is, the big announcement that came at Comic-Con, your brand new Amazing Comics, aka Idaho's #1 comic company, and your partnership with Mad Cave Studios. Now, what I
Mhm.
want to start with is where did the idea for Amazing Comics come from? How did you decide on Idaho? And how did your partnership with Mad Cave come about?
Okay, so let's start with the Idaho part.
Okay.
Idaho chose me.
Okay.
So I've been living in Idaho now. We're gonna it's probably coming up on 3 years, or maybe
Okay.
3 years already. But I've had a house out here for much longer. And that came about from my daughter used to be a competitive figure skater,
Okay.
and here where we are in Idaho, there's a great skating facility with Olympic coaches and some of the best coaching in the States.
Sure.
So we came out here once, and um, it was the first time we've traveled anywhere where it was the entire family's happy place. We were here with our dogs and stuff, and it's like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. And I'm a snobbish New Yorker. I am born and bred New Yorker, and I'm like, well,
Yeah.
I so I begrudgingly came out here with the family, and it was like, what? Uh, who's been hiding this place? So, I come out here I've been coming out here for many years, well over a decade. But then COVID happened, and we just wrote it out here, and then eventually decided, let's just stay here. What's, it's just a beautiful place. We love it. And, got 3 dogs and a cat, and, it's a bunch of friends out here. So, it's a fun place. And, it's also, just beautiful. Like I look out my studio window this side, I see the mountains, and, so it's a real great creative vibe. So I don't pick me. But I figured the idea for Amazing Comics literally started in 2005. And it's a longer story for another day. I was still at Marvel, and that trigger was almost pulled, but anyway, it went by the wayside for a while. But I kept the name, and it's actually been the name of my LLC for a very long time, since 2005, in preparation for publishing. So it's always been in the back of my mind. Just like in the back of my mind, I knew, I'm not going to be a Marvel for the rest of my life. It just doesn't, it's not going to happen.
Sure.
So I knew that, when that day would come, that I wanted to go back to my roots of self-publishing. And, I always kept a notebook of ideas of things that I'd like to do someday, that were not Marvel related or superhero related.
Sure.
And, knew that I would pull the trigger on that. So the idea's been in my head for a really long time. Um, and then, as it started to, once I was out of Marvel, um, the ideas started to percolate a little bit more, how to structure it. And the day after my announcement, my Marvel announcement, the first people to contact me were the folks from Mad Cave and Mark Irwin, saying, we just want to be in business with you. Whatever you want to do, we want to do it. And so we started talking at that point. And at the same time, though, I'm very good friends with Olivier Halibert, who's over at Dupuis. And Olivier pulled me aside and said, whatever you want to do, because doing a European graphic album is on my bucket list of things that I wanted to do,
Sure.
just to explore a new market, a different genre, a different size book, in terms of specs. And so, I said, well, maybe there's a way to do this where um, I could do both, and started talking to Mad Cave. And as it turns out, Mark Irwin is very familiar was good friends with Olivier. Everybody knew each other,
Sure.
unbeknownst to me. So we started talking, and we hammered out this deal where, Amazing will create some books that'll be distributed by Mad Cave and Dupuis, and in both markets, in both the North American market and the European market. Um, and we'll be creating material, creating stories and characters that hopefully appeal to both markets. So, I'm also in the headspace where, um, it- not that I dislike superheroes, that I don't want to do superheroes, but I really want to try some other things.
Sure.
So there's other things on my list right now, other genres, different kinds of characters, different kinds of stories that I want to explore. And the first one is this book called Disciple, our book called Disciple, which is um, an adaptation slash reinvention of Hamlet. But before anybody goes, oh no, Shakespeare, oh, it's stodgy. This is a different take in a different, it's Hamlet in a different world. The
Yeah.
only the only thing that will seem familiar are some of the themes, but even within the themes, we've taken some twists with the plot. But probably more obvious is that our first story arc, our first 6 issues, um, explores Hamlet's youth, which Shakespeare did not. Right? He didn't even get a chance to do
Sure.
Hamlet Zero or the prequel. So when we see Hamlet in the play, he's fully formed. He's an adult, and he's walking into a world in which his uncle has married his mother. Not cool. So our story though starts way before that, when Hamlet's about 13 years old,
Sure.
and we see what happens with things, the events in his life, the kind of kid he is that forms the adult who eventually uh, sort of starts to bump into Shakespeare's original story, with many of the same themes. But again, there are some twists. And the one thing that we decided that would be cool to do is to play it sort of card up rather than, Tony and Maria, do a Tony Maria West Side Story thing. Um, it is a different world, but the characters' names will stay the same. So Hamlet is Hamlet, Hamlet Senior is Hamlet Senior. Everybody's called by their names in the play, so that you're aware of, if you're aware of the play, you're aware of the archetypes, and the kind of characters that they are. Um, and you don't have to necessarily, piece it together. But I think that it's also be the interesting part about it, is to see where these characters go. Because Hamlet dies in the play. So we've got some uh, we've got some interesting things coming up in our story, with our lead.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're telling the prequel story, everyone knows who's read it knows Hamlet passes away. There's a whole lot of story you can still tell in between that time.
Yeah, so that's the fun part, is filling in the cracks, because we
Yeah.
know we know the kind of character that Hamlet, when he enters the play, we discover, what makes him tick.
Yeah.
In our story, we show you the things that we believe happened in this particular world that we've created, that make Hamlet tick, and make him sort of the brooding young man, the dark prince that he sort of is.
Very cool. I'm very excited to read it. It sounds like it's going to be an incredible series. So
Having fun with it. Yeah.
that's awesome. So, with all the amazing things you've accomplished in the world of comics already,
Pardon the
what
pun.
what what are your goals with Amazing Comics and your new partnership with Mad Cave?
Just to tell good stories. Literally, that's it. and um, and to sell some books. At the end of the
Sure.
day, I don't want it to be anything more complex than that. You know, we live in a world right now where everybody talks about, you know, we're in this place now where people in comics have adopted that same kind of vernacular that is present in Hollywood, where you know characters and stories are talked about as commodities, which I understand they are, right. So it's all about, you know, IP and content, IP and content,
Mhm.
uh, and 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 I don't want to think that way. You know, I've done the Hollywood thing for a very, very long time. I still am. Um, but you know, my focus, Amazing's focus, is going to be characters and stories. We just want to create great stories. Hopefully, the fans, you know, like the stories and they'll want to buy more. And you know, because we have a few, just many, many more announcements to make down the road. But we're building some stuff right now. But ultimately, that's the experience I want. Um, is for fans to just say, okay, these are comics that are being written for us. They aren't necessarily being written to be, you know, sold as a pilot in Hollywood. Not to say that I would shun Hollywood if they said we wanted to make a movie out of
Sure.
Disciple or anything else we did,
Yeah.
but that's not the goal because I also because I don't know if you could serve both masters. I don't know if you can create uh a great comic, a great story, while at the same time saying, you know, this is being developed to sell to Netflix. You know, I've seen way too many people go down that road, and you know, you can't chase that tiger because um, even if you think you have something that, oh, they don't have anything like this, by the time your story's out there, they've got 10 things like it.
Yeah.
So you know, my gut is just telling me, and really just my desire is just to tell these stories that I've wanted to tell for a very, very long time. You know, stylistically in a way that I've wanted to draw in a very, very long time. And you know, it's different than Marvel, right? You know, there was
Sure.
expectations at Marvel, I fan expectations at Marvel, and you know, always tried to meet the customer where they were and at the same time provide them something fun and interesting that maybe they weren't expecting, or certainly not expecting in the way it was being delivered.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with Amazing. Just you know, it's just a mom and pop comic book company, and the fans are going to be as much a part of the creative process as we are. You know, because their input matters, and your input matters, and that's why you know our sort of company slogan is established in your imagination because I remember reading, you know, those Marvel books when I was a kid and reading Stan's soapbox and he had this mutant ability where he could write these short soapboxes and just make you feel like he knew you and you knew
Yeah.
him
Hmm.
and you were led into his world. And that, you know, if you wrote a letter, someone's going to read it and it may help, you know, make for you know, a change in some of the things that they were doing or ideas for the universe. It just felt familial and um, a place you wanted to gravitate to, a place you wanted to live. Right? Yeah, that's
Sure.
one of my things I've always said about the Marvel universe. It's like it's a universe in which, boy, I really wish it existed and I could live there.
Yeah.
Um, and I want to do the same thing with Amazing. You know, it's a small company, and we're not going to be putting out 20 books a month. It's like it's not the goal. The goal
Sure.
is to put out, you know, uh, just great books on a timely basis.
Sure. Now, how does it feel going from, being at the mercy of the stockholders and the shareholders and, the fan expectation of, we need to see our characters a certain way to now just having the complete freedom to kind of just do whatever and tell the stories you want to tell without really any expectation?
Yeah. Well, you know, there was, to be clear, there was never any sort of stockholder pressure at Marvel. The
Or,
only pressure was just like to sell books, you know, just like you
yeah,
know, that's our goal. Our goal is to be as creative as possible with these characters, and just, you know, have engaged people in the stories and sell some comics. Um, so so that pressure really hasn't changed. It never felt like pressure because it was always fun. Um, so I never experienced that kind of a thing at Marvel. Always had a good time, and it was always a good crew. And even dueling with fans or talking to fans. It's one of my favorite things to do. Is to talk to fans. And because this is what makes this industry unique in the sense that fans could actually meet the creators of the books, the creators they love, they hate, they feel indifferent about, publicly at a convention, or they can email, and I've answered hundreds and thousands of fan emails that used to come in at Marvel. So I love that interaction. Um, so with Amazing, it's just taking all the lessons that I've learned at Marvel, from my time at Marvel Knights and editor in chief, and then the lessons I've learned from self-publishing, much earlier on in my career, and the mistakes I made and the successes I had, and just try to apply them to Amazing. It's just not looking to reinvent the wheel,
Sure.
but I'm looking to do. And the truth of the matter is, you don't have to reinvent things to necessarily reinvent the wheel. Sometimes it's just a matter of getting back to basics when maybe companies have sort of lost that back to basics edge, due to whatever policies are being adhered to, or stories that they want to tell. That's the one thing that I am enjoying, is the fact that I'm going to sink or swim based upon my own decisions. At Marvel, we did nobody was a singular voice that said, this is how we're doing it, right? We all sat in a room and everything was done through collaboration. Um, and we would, for better or for worse, it was all done through collaboration.
Sure.
But I'm sorry, that's wrong. Whether it was successful or not for better or for worse, because it was always a great sort of environment.
Sure.
But the decisions were not just, one person saying, we're doing this, and that's the direction we go. So in this case, I'm not putting out an entire line of books. So I'm happy to just be doing my thing, and that feels good again. And that sort of independence feels really, really good. And I'm prepared to fail miserably, and I'm prepared to succeed, and just really, I'm just prepared for the unknown at the end of the day.
Sure. And it's good that you're going into the mindset of, you're not intentionally going to create stuff to, market it for IP, or, for Hollywood or whatever. You're just going into it with the idea of making a good story. And I think that's always a better way to go into it, because, of course, it's good to sell tons of books, and it's good to, license the TV and movie or whatever. But, as long as you're telling a story you want to tell, and you're happy with the story you're telling, I think that's definitely the more beneficial, or the one that feels better.
Yeah, it's definitely more satisfying. That'll
Yes.
be infinitely more satisfying.
Sure.
Because I love publishing in my heart, given a choice between, I've worked, either on my own or through Marvel. I've worked in just about every aspect of the entertainment business, from comics, movies, TV, video games, music, theme parks. I've worked on the creative side of all that stuff, animation. Um, and I just gotta say, nothing satisfies me more than comics. The only other thing that gets me as juiced as comics is when I have the opportunity to direct something.
Sure.
That's a great feeling too. But it's very similar.
Sure.
Um, it's you're telling stories visually,
Mhm.
uh, and it just there was something about both those that are incredibly satisfying. But ultimately, comics is what I do, and it's what I will always do. And even if I get to a point where you know no one gives a darn about what I write, what I draw, or anything like that, I'll still probably do it, even if no one sees it, because it's just what I do.
That's good. And I think no matter what, I think there's always going to be somebody that's going to want to see. So it's very good to hear.
I sure hope so, man. Sure hope so.
All right, sir, before I let you go, I want to see if there's any
Dude,
upcoming.
you gotta stop with the sir stuff,
I
man.
apologize. I
You're
apologize.
killing me.
It's it's
It's Joe,
it's
please.
it's a habit. I apologize.
No, no, I understand. Your parents brought you up, right? You know, the whole thing, right?
Sure. So are there any other upcoming projects that you can talk about yet, or we just need to stay tuned?
I could hint at another one. You know,
Okay.
I've been working on a project for Marvel actually that I'm putting to bed.
Okay.
Um, that I'm hoping you know, will be can publicly talk about it by the end of the year, you know. But it's you know, for the time being, it'll probably be it's sequential stuff. It's probably the most sequential stuff I've done since Daredevil. So for the time being, it'll probably be the last sequential work that I do for Marvel today. And then that's just simply because of time and because I want to devote the time I have to Disciple and other books.
Sure. Cool. Well, where can nope, we don't want to do that yet. I want to first say before we close things up,
Yeah.
is there a bit of advice that you'd like to, share with fellow creatives out there, fellow writers like myself, and just other types of creatives? What's a piece of advice you would share?
You know, stay off the internet. I mean, and I mean, use the internet for what it's good for. Promote your stuff, you know, promote your stuff. Um, don't fall into the trap of getting agitated by agitators who are just there to agitate you, right? The goal, and again, just my opinion, right?
Sure.
Um, like my goal with Disciple is the same goal that I have with Marvel, which is, you know, I see everyone as a customer. Everyone's my customer base. And I would love for everyone to buy my books. And that's kind of the fun part about being out here in Idaho. Um, is just some sort of it's very, very tempting to go on the net and see what the latest scuttlebutt is about. But it's also great to just stare at the mountains and say, you know what? It doesn't matter. All that matters is I just draw and I write some stuff. Promote my stuff on the internet when it needs to be promoted. Use it as a tool. Use it especially as a way of communicating with fans. I have I'm gonna plug my Substack. Joe Quesada is drawing the line somewhere on Substack.
Yeah,
So just look me up. It's free. And I have a lot of fun with the Substack. I mean, I don't do it as much as I should be doing it, but I'm going to get back on a rhythm. It's just I've been drawing and writing my butt off lately. So I love it for that, and I love Substack in particular because it's a great environment because the people that are on there and subscribe to my newsletter want to be there. They're and even if they don't agree with everything I say, they're at least we're enjoying the conversation of this, and enjoying disagreeing because it's all pretty civil.
sure.
So yeah, I guess my advice would be, you know, it's you got to understand that right now, the news cycle, anything you promote is chewed up and spit out on social within a matter of hours,
Yeah,
So, but you know, some of the online bickering and all that kind of stuff, that stuff does lasting damage, especially to your to
oh yeah,
your to your customer base, right?
sure.
You want everyone to buy your stuff, and we live in a very sort of tribalish divided world right now.
No, yeah,
I really want no part of it. I just don't.
yeah,
I just want to create and hopefully have everybody enjoy my stuff.
yeah, for sure. And yeah, the internet, social media in particular, is kind of a blessing and a curse because for people like you and people like me, we need social media to promote our
Yeah,
stuff so people can find our stuff. At the same time, it's like I don't really want to do it because it's like you said, it can be a terrible place sometimes for every sort of reason.
yeah, and it's yeah, and it could be. silly, dumb. It's a huge time suck too.
Oh yeah.
I see some creators that post, you know, a boatload of times during the day, and I just don't under. I admire them because they're able to do that and get their work done
Yeah,
at the same time. I can't. I just can't. It's too much of a distraction. I'm like, what's the dog from Up's name? Oh God, I can't believe I'm not
I
remembering it
can't
now.
remember.
But I'm always squirrel, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah. Yep.
gotta answer it. I've been changing that routine on email as well. But yeah, just try to avoid it. It's just I don't think it's necessary and a massive, massive waste of time.
For sure. And yeah, like you said, every once in a while, I just got to get out and look at the mountains because I haven't been out to your part of Idaho for it's been over 20 years since I've been out that
Yeah.
way. But I remember it's super beautiful out there. And I just go,
Well, you let me know when you're out here.
I
We'll grab a
will.
beer or something.
Oh, that sounds great, actually. Yeah, because we're not too far away, and that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Awesome, man.
All right, so where can people find you on socials? Where can people stay up to date with you? I know you mentioned your Substack. Where
Yep.
else can we find you?
I'm Joe Quesada on Instagram. I'm Joe Quesada on Facebook and Joe Quesada on Twitter. So I'm everywhere. I don't post that often. I post more on my Substack. Uh, but as Amazing starts to gear up, I'll eventually be doing more of that. There's also the Amazing Comics website. Which is it's not Amazing Comics, it's Amazing Comics Co.com. And that's under construction right now. So there's not a lot to see yet, but eventually that'll be filling up and will probably be home base for everything where everything will be directed through. But again, like I said, it's all under construction.
Perfect. Well, to find myself, I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Fueled by Weird. You can email me at fueledbyweird@gmail.com. I want to thank Polygon Horizon. Their song Pizza Force is the theme song for the show. Go check them out on Bandcamp. They're a great band. You can find me on YouTube along with this interview and many other great interviews wherever you get your podcasts. And now you can find me on the Spotlight Media GA app along with the rest of the Stay Weird Network shows, the Nerdy Manroom show with Hassel and Monster, Hassel's Review, and Big Rob's House of Entertainment and No Chinese Food. Now, Stay Weird Network, it's a brand new podcast network dedicated to bringing some awesome back to the internet. Check us out at Stay Weird Media on YouTube and Instagram and email us stayweirdmedia@gmail.com. And I want to thank my sponsor, The Zone Collectibles in Tifton, Georgia, your one-stop shop for comics, collectibles, and so much more. Now, if you like this show, please leave a review and tell your friends because word of mouth is my friend. And remember, kids, life's too short to be normal, so stay weird. Joe, thanks so much for
Absolutely.
joining me today.
Absolutely. Everybody tell your friends about this podcast. Chris is awesome.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.